How much do you think we could do in a long weekend in Albania? So here is a capital of a country I never thought I'd really come to. Well, not until quite late. Welcome to Tirana, Albania. Albania, a country that proves you can go from being a hermit kingdom to something just a little bit more open. Back in the Cold War days, this country was closed. It was closed as much as North Korea was. But in the 1990s, the country collapsed, the economy collapsed. So a quick modern history of Albania for you. Following World War II, Pasha became the dictator that ruled over all of Albania and closed this country up like a hermit kingdom that made North Korea look open. So paranoid was Hoxha about people invading. All of the metal spikes used by the vineyards had to have sharpened tips in case paratroopers came down so they would be impaled. There are concrete bunkers spread all over the countryside of Albania because Hoxha desperately feared invasion. Little did he know that no one wanted to come here anyway. By 1992, Barret took power and his government was so incompetent it allowed a whole series of financial pyramid schemes to be created, and by 1996, 1997 these pyramid schemes collapsed and the entire country fell to pieces. So Albania, to a lesser extent than Bosnia and Serbia, was the key territory fought over between the Christian empires and the Ottoman Turks, and the sway back and forward across the Balkans for that 500 years, where the Balkans acted as that front line between those two great religious empires, Ottoman Muslims and particularly Venetian Christians. So let's talk Islam for a second. For 500 years, Albania was under the control of the Ottoman Turks and of course was Islamic. Under communism, of course, all religion was abolished ineffectively. So when communism collapsed, religion has come back, but not in a strong way. It's nominally 70 or 80% Islamic, about 20% Orthodox, and the rest something else nominally. But in reality, in the way people dress and behave, it's not a strictly Islamic country. In fact, it's very, very relaxed when it comes to religion, and intermarriage is not uncommon here. This mosque was built in 1821, so not that old in Albania's Islamic history. The clock tower next door, the clock tower was built in 1822. Built by Sultan Mehmet II. Sultan Mehmet was known as the Conqueror. In 1502, this is the oldest Islamic building of worship in Albania. I'm in the World Heritage protected town of Barret in central Albania. Barret is World Heritage as it's one of the finest examples of Ottoman architecture left over from the 17th and 18th centuries. Barret is known as the city of 1,000 windows because of that sort of architecture, which looks down upon the river that flows gently through this town. One of the interesting things around about Barret is the castle on the hill and the village that still lives within the castle's walls are entirely Christian, and indeed entirely Christian Orthodox, and it shows the very good and strong link that exists still between the Serbs and the Albanian Christian Orthodox population. Behind me here is a 16th century Orthodox church. It's amazing when you think about it. The Ottoman Turks left all of that Christian structures intact when they had a garrison here looking after Barret. Here in Barret you learn one of those things about Albania as a tourist destination. Look how many there are. Imagine if you walked out of your house here in Albania and you walk into your back garden and this was your back garden. Yes, before the Venetians, or before the communists, and before the Venetians, and before the Byzantines, there were the Romans who lived here. This amphitheater could hold between 15 and 18,000 people and was built in the 2nd century AD. Dorys, Albania. The word in Albanian for sale is shitet, and you can imagine the real estate agents who are wanting to sell these houses here. Shitet, for sale. And what's your view over? A 2,000-year-old amphitheater. John O'Haydon, that beats a century-old renovated timber bench top. You might think it's weird that literally in the middle of a Roman amphitheater is inhabited houses. The reason for that is this amphitheater was only discovered in 1966. After the Romans, here in Dorys came the Byzantines, and this is an old chapel underneath the amphitheater here. And here in the chapel is some wonderful old mosaic art, and there's some really interesting questions that come from this, because what this little chapel does is it shows a lot of religious and artistic transition from the Roman through the Byzantine times. Question then is, how old is this stuff, these mosaics? You might be tempted to say that it's 4th or 5th century. Now, why 4th or 5th century AD? Well, this amphitheater was built in about 200. The Byzantine Empire, or the Roman Empire, converted to Christianity in about 300, and these are old Roman style mosaics, so you might think 4th, 5th century, something like this. The thing is, underneath, if you look in the top corner, you can find old frescoes written or painted in blue, and through different techniques and x-rays they've seen the pictures underneath those and been able to date them through the stories to around about 800 or 900. So the thinking is that these mosaics might be from around about the 11th century. And that's what makes this particularly exciting, because normally in old Roman ruins that have transitioned through Byzantium and into the Ottoman Turkish period, they've been painted over or destroyed. But because this wasn't found until 1966, this is left intact from 1,000 years ago. The other thing we know about this piece of artwork is it was paid for by a donor named Alexander, because we've got two little figures in the bottom left-hand corner and the mosaic saying give thanks to Alexander. We're not meaning Alexander the Great, of course, that was 300 years before Christ. But up in the top right-hand corner we've got a reference to Sophia, of course, one of the most important churches over in Istanbul, Constantinople, Byzantium as it's been known in its time, is the Hagia Sophia. So this fella Alexander either lived here or lived in what is now Istanbul, and part of his give back, part of his donation, was to make this little mural in this chapel, presumably for local dignitaries or even the emperor. So Dorys Castle. This castle was first built during the Hellenic years, the times of Alexander the Great. By the way, a little known piece of fact, Alexander the Great, is he Greek? The Greeks say so. The Macedonians say he's Macedonian. In truth, he was born in Albania. Anyway, this castle was built in Hellenic times, built on by the Romans, then the Byzantines, then the Venetians, then the Ottomans. These walls speak the history of the Roman Empire and the Christian-Turkish clashes down to the present day. If you had a Byzantine-era wall in your back garden, wouldn't you use it for a clothesline? At the end of Dorys' walls is a turret built by the Venetians when they were here in the 15th century. And what have the Albanians done with this turret? Oh. Yep, 15th century tower top bar. I'm on the edge of Lake Cumberland, which is in the Cumberland National Park here in central western Albania. The coast is not far, just over there, but this is a lake. And it sums up a lot of things about Albania here for me. It's not what I expected. I expected a much more frontier western gung-ho recovering from communism type state that you find in a number of other former Eastern Bloc countries. But not this one. It seems to have put communism behind it. You don't see the shops selling the tacky communist souvenirs and the old badges to Hoxha or things like that that you see in Serbia or Russia or Lithuania. No, this is a country that seems to be doing a lot of economic recovery, but in its own way. Three main sources of income: remittance funding, expatriate workers sending money home, and you see that manifesting in a lot of family unit blocks getting redeveloped, new houses, solar heating, fresh paint, funding from the European Union, and funding because they're members of NATO. But this doesn't seem to be an economic recovery where the multinationals are pulling in. It seems to be a lot more organic, a lot more Albanian. Albania still seems to be the place that people haven't quite twigged to yet, with beautiful coastlines, national parks like this one, and a very laid-back attitude. You know, a lot of the people love the Adriatic coast and go to Italy or now even Croatia. At some point, the Adriatic coast of Albania has to open up and become popular to people other than Albanians. It really is a surprisingly pleasant country. And one of the things we've noticed here is people are extremely friendly. They come up and talk to you in the streets, but there's no sense of, well, here's another tourist, another walking wallet to pinch money out of. So there's none of that development here. It's just people who are genuinely, openly friendly. And just to show that the Albanians are getting a wriggle on, this is the Dorys Albanian Institute, soon to be opened. I like this place. It's got a really laid-back feel. They've put all of communism behind them. I kind of wish we were here for a couple of weeks. It would be nice to sort of amble from north to south or south to north instead of this 3-day rush we're doing. It's a pretty cool country. You know, about 300 metres that way is the border with Montenegro. This is the largely unspoiled Adriatic coastline of Albania. I say largely unexploited or largely untouched, because if you look really closely, you'll find lots of rocks set up in what I can only assume are military embankments left over from the Hoxha years, 20 years ago, when everything had a bunker. And this had to be one of the potential axes of advance if, for some reason, Montenegro wanted to invade Albania. And now I see signs everywhere saying shitet. And shitet is the Albanian word for sale. And British citizens can buy land here. So, I'm really tempted. Never know, I might become a hermit one day and live just there. Greetings from Albania.